In this video, I painted Fateskimmer on Burning Chariot, and I'll show you my first attempt at wet blending. Back at it again, painting another Zinch Demon. And yes, it's for Campbell. Unlike the previous two videos, there's a specified color scheme this time. I have to match the style of these screamers, and it looks like they have been wet blended in the traditional way, or with contrast paints. Hence, my first attempt at wet blending. I received the mini assembled, so I had to clean the knot marks and seam lines. Unfortunately, the Fateskimmer detached from the Chariot, and the feet melted off due to poor assembly. I had to kit bash some pink horrors to repair the feet. I used a single edge snipper to cut the material. By doing so, you get a clean cut, which provides good contact for the plastic cement. Once the plastic cement is cured, I use a hobby knife to trim off the plastic so that the ankle and feet lines up. Then I go over with liquid green stuff to add some volume to the mini. I also added green stuff to the screamer to fill in the gaps. Multiple layers are required because of the wide gaps. While I wait for the green stuff to cure, I drill a hole onto the Chariot and into the Fateskimmer, because I will need to pin the minis together. After the green stuff has dried, I apply another coat of plastic cement onto the screamers and Fateskimmer. This will give a smooth finish for the minis. After I've repaired the mini, I prime with a pre-shade. This will provide a natural gradient for the base coat, plus the lighter color will allow for the wet blending to be more effective. I painted the Fateskimmer and Burning Chariot at the same time. To avoid confusion, I'll show you how I paint the Fateskimmer first. I paint the claws with an off-white. I airbrush the skin red, white for the feathers around the ears, purple for the loincloth, and yes, 2 thin coats for best results, black for the eyes, silver for some of the jewelry and staff, gold for most of the jewelry, helmet, and ornaments, clean up the red, and pink for the tongue. Brown wash for everything except the loincloth, feathers, and tongue, and a purple wash for everything I excluded from the brown wash. A pink dry brush for the skin, and a purple dry brush for the loincloth. I'll be using object source lighting for the fire and the staff. I use my airbrush to apply an opaque orange, followed up by a bright orange, and finishing up the tips with a yellow. I thinned the yellow too much, so I had some overspray on the arm and the helmet. To fix up, I go over with the red, making sure my brush is wet so that it blends nicely, and I also did the same thing for the gold on the helmet. With the Fateskimmer done, let's paint the Chariot. An off-white for all the bone features, a blue for the Chariot, and gold for all the trim. Using these screamers as reference, I'm gonna separate the colors into a few sections. With a wet brush, I start with yellow for the tail, then I blend into a green for center mass, a blue for the wings, and purple for the head. For the other screamer, I start with a purple for the tips of the tail, a red for the base of the tail, yellow for the wing sections, and green for the head. I had to go back with a blue to finish up the wings on the previous screamer. The wet paint basically blends itself. After the paint dried, I didn't get my desired result, so I went back to touch it up. I had to paint red for the center mass and blended the green from the head. The best advice I can give is to not overdo the paint, because when there's too much paint, there's little control. I had to touch up the bones with an off-white, because I went a little crazy with the wet blend. Then I painted the eyes black. I used a blue wash to shade the Chariot. I wanted the bone elements to have a worn look, so I shaded both screamers with a brown wash. Dry brush the bones with a brown. This gives a desired rough texture. I got a little lazy while highlighting the screamers. Instead of using the same colors for each section, I used a pink dry brush for everything. Personally, I think it turned out nice. It gives the mini character. Same as before, I'll be using OSL for the fire. I use my airbrush to apply an opaque orange, followed up by a bright orange, and finishing up the tips with a yellow. I apply mud texture for the base, using a sculpting tool and silicone brush to work them into place. Then I use my fingers to wipe off the excess. I give it a brown dry brush as the first highlight tone, followed by a heavy brown wash to bring out the shadows. Then using the same dry brush to add more definition. Lastly, I mix brown and white to make a bright highlight. Then I add a light dry brush to pick up terrain features. So, Mark gave me a huge variety of foliage for basing. I now basically have an endless amount of options when it comes to basing. Thanks, Mark! Using a silicone brush, I apply PVA glue onto the base where I would like to have grass. I tried to use a sculpting tool to apply the grass, but it was clumped together. Instead, I sprinkle it on with my fingers. It's in the script, I have to add it. Don't add a dead meme, it's cringe. Why not? If you do, I'll destroy you. Okay. Good. Psych.
We now return to your scheduled program.
I do it in sections, just to make the process easier and tidier. Rinse and repeat until all the PVA glue is covered with grass. Now to paint on the reflections of the fly for the base, I airbrush a strong orange, followed up by a bright orange, and finally a yellow. Lastly, I paint the rim of the base black. Together with the other Screamers and Abaddon, they look cohesive and I'm very happy about that. And matching the basing more closely with Abaddon really adds to that. If I were to review this, I should have color matched my shades for the Screamers instead of using only a brown wash. Thank you for watching the video and see you in the next one.